Today, we have 5 terrifying ghost stories that happened around Valentine's Day. Watch until the end of the video to see actual footage of paranormal activity recorded by the original poster. If you enjoy this type of content, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for a feast of grim and grisly content. I'm your host, Severed Soul. Story 1. She'd been dead since Valentine's Day. I'm 36, female, and this story takes place in Carolina. So, years ago, I worked in a flower shop as a lead designer. The business owner was a world-class designer, and we worked side by side for several years. I will call her G. I mean, there were times where me and G barely went home. It was Valentine's Day, which meant it was very normal for us to work 72 hours straight in the lead up to Valentine's, even with a load of other designers brought in to help us with the influx of work. Dee was like my best friend for a long time. We spent countless hours talking, and she really taught me how to perfect my craft. Over time, we kind of drifted apart, and I chose to seek employment elsewhere. After a few more years of working very hard, with ridiculous hours, for very little money to show for it, I decided to leave the industry altogether. I was fairly bitter at the time about many things. I cut myself off from all the people that were close to me, including co-workers and friends. About a month ago, I was walking along the sidewalk here in town, and I was crossing in front of a restaurant called Lee's Chicken. I stopped for a small black SUV which was turning into the drive-thru. I looked up, and it was my old friend and boss, G, from the flower shop, who I hadn't seen for a few years. I could recognise that face anywhere. Instead of stopping or waving, I watched a smirk appear across her face as she pulled in to order her food. I know things didn't end on the best of terms, but I was a little bit hurt. She was always super friendly, and we became very close. So I didn't expect her to simply brush me off like this. Anyway, I threw her a smile in spite of myself. Lee's is famous where we live for their fried chicken, but G had type 2 diabetes. So, she would go there just for an order of their green beans. In the time I'd gotten to know her, it was her favourite thing to eat, and Lee's Chicken was only 2 blocks away from her house. With this in mind, I wasn't massively surprised to cross paths with her here. A few days passed by, and the encounter had slipped to the back of my mind. I was walking home from the park downtown when I heard someone shout a nickname that I hadn't heard for years. I turned around, and I saw one of the other designers that I used to work with at G's shop. Let's call her Kay. Me and Kay chatted for a few moments, and then we both went on our way. 2 days later, I crossed paths with another woman, A, who we also used to work with at the flower shop. Me and A chatted briefly, and we decided to exchange cell numbers. 2 weeks later, I randomly thought about A, and decided to give her a call. It turns out she was moving house, and she really needed some help, so I offered to go over and give her a hand. As we were catching up, I remarked how odd it was that I'd gone for years without seeing anyone from the shop. And yet, within the space of just a few days, I'd seen G, K, and A. A looked confused. She turned to me and said, "Well, that's not possible." She told me that recently she'd spoken to another woman who used to be our office manager. This woman told her that G had passed away on Valentine's of the previous year. I emphatically responded that I'd just seen G a few weeks prior with my own eyes. We were both really confused, so A pulled out her phone and Googled G. There it was, her obituary from the previous year. She died in her home on Valentine's Day, and she was found after she failed to show up for work the following Monday. Obviously, I was in shock. Not only that someone that was once so prominent in my life had died and I hadn't heard a thing about it, but I swear I had just seen her. Trust me, I worked 80 plus hours with that woman over the space of 3 years. I know that face. We had been involved in the larger industry itself outside of the shop, as well as social events. Hell, I even knew her daughter and rented a house from her brother for a while. And finally, the smirk kind of made sense. I feel like she knew what she was setting into motion. It was her way of letting me know, and damn, she really got me. This was exactly the kind of stunt that she'd pull, just to prove a point. Though this may not be scary, it still really freaked me out. I have been witness to the paranormal since I can remember. When people say, I don't believe in ghosts, I always remark that personally, I don't have a choice. The luxury of not believing in ghosts has never been afforded to me. I'm still freaked out over this whole situation, and it's been over a month now. To see a perfectly normal, everyday type scenario play out in front of your eyes, to only later find out that it was impossible, realising in that moment that what I had seen was a fully vivid apparition. If anyone was watching me, they'd have seen me stop walking, wave and smile, but apparently nothing. There was nothing there in front of me. Please offer your thoughts on this story in the comments section down below. Story 2. 1 month after Valentine's. So, a little backstory. My stepfather passed away this past Valentine's Day, and it's now the 14th of March. Before I start the story, I didn't realise that this was the date. I'll explain why this is important later. So my buddies had just left my house to go back to school. I only had 3 hours of school left for that day. Just to clarify, I am a believer in the paranormal. That's why what happened really freaked me out. Anyway, I ordered pizza for lunch. The pizza guy delivers the pizza, and I go back to my room to eat. I could hear my dog barking, growling, going crazy, in full-on guard dog mode at the front door. This happened many times before, so it wasn't a major concern. But it was his energy and body language that had me concerned. There was something very different about the way he was behaving. Usually, when he goes berserk, he'll be staring at his own level, which is about 2 feet off the ground. Or he'll be going ballistic at the bottom of the door. On this occasion, he was staring just above me, just past my shoulder, around the same height as my stepdad. I shrugged it off and went back into my room. Within a few minutes, I could hear him again. However, this time, he's staring directly at my stepdad's chair. So yes, I was really creeped out and decided to call my mother. We have great service here, and every time I try to make a call, there's never a problem with connection, and it goes straight into the phone call. But this time, I was right by my stepdad's chair, and the call wouldn't connect. So, I walked into my room, and immediately the call connects. Weird. It was time for me to go and pick my brother up from school. As we were walking home, I told him what had happened. And he said, "That's really weird. Do you realise it's been exactly 1 month since Dad died?" My stepdad was my brother's biological father. I just froze, as I was putting all the pieces together. There is no doubt in my mind that my stepfather came to check up on me that day. Story 3. Late night, creepy vibes. This happened when I was 18 years old. Me and a workmate were working late. We worked at a restaurant in New Zealand. Anyway, I was letting the last customers out of the restaurant before closing for the night. It was Valentine's Day, so we'd been especially busy. I thanked the customers and locked all the doors in the restaurant so we could start tidying up. It was raining heavily and there was a thunderstorm on the horizon, which isn't out of the ordinary for New Zealand. Nevertheless, it was crazy, and it creeped us workers out, because the lights and the power kept flickering on and off. Me and my mate were the last workers to finish clearing up. My mate was the manager of the restaurant, and she told everyone that they could finish early, as we didn't really have much to do. But she asked if one of us could stay a little bit longer just to help her close up, so I offered to stay. We were having a good old laugh and a chat, and I'd say we'd been clearing up for about an hour. This was when we heard a massive bang come from the reception area, and it sounded like the door. A guy came running in, asking if he could use the bathroom, and he looked pretty desperate. He was soaked to the bone, and looked really upset, like he'd been crying. So me and my mate said okay, sure, and pointed him towards the bathroom. I thought to myself, I'm sure I locked that door. Maybe the crazy wind blew it open. I ran and shut the door, but I didn't lock it, so the guy who just came in could get back out again. Neither me nor my mate had dates for Valentine's, so we decided to have food at the restaurant. We made food, sat down, and started chatting. We talked for a good 30 minutes or so, when we realised that that guy that came in out of the rain hadn't come out of the bathroom yet. We were a bit concerned, so my mate went in to check on him, and she came back out with a confused look on her face. She said, "That man's not in the toilet." So we both just assumed that he'd ducked out of there without us realising, so I went back over to lock the door again. This time, I knew with absolute certainty that I had locked that door. As I was walking back to the table to finish my dinner, the door flew open once more. The same guy came in, asking exactly the same thing again. This time, I was really creeped out. I turned to my mate, who was freaking out even more than I was. He was signalling for me to look into the tinted windows that were just in front of us. The lights started flickering on and off again, which made it quite difficult for me to tell what she was signalling for me to do. I looked behind me, and that guy was still standing there. I turned and looked into the reflection of that tinted window. That's when I noticed something absolutely chilling. When I looked into that window, I could see that the man that was standing behind me had no reflection. My heart was racing, and I kept my eyes locked on my friend. We both said he could use the toilet. She turned back to look at the man, and with a panicked tone in her voice, she said, "He's gone. Where did he go?" There's no way that he could have just walked away that quickly. My friend thinks she has some kind of psychic gift or something. She said third time around isn't a good sign. So, she told me to leave everything and lock the doors, and we got out of there immediately. Nothing ever happened again after that, but it was really creepy. It's definitely the most intense situation I've ever experienced. Later on, we discovered that the staff from the theme park across the road had also experienced things. They had even more terrifying encounters than we did. Workers would end up being sick off work for days. Rumour has it that that theme park is built on an old cemetery. I'm 30 years old now, and I still remember it as if it happened yesterday. Story 4. A chilling phone call on Valentine's. So, This story happened to my brother, and it gives me the ever-living chills. It was Valentine's Day on the night this happened. My brother and his then girlfriend were making the most of the occasion on his bed at my grandma's house. His phone rang, but he missed the call. When he checked, he'd received a very strange voicemail. This voicemail had been sent from his girlfriend's phone to his. However, there was no call history on his phone or hers. Just a voicemail from her phone to his. He said what he heard when he listened to that voicemail was absolutely terrifying. He could hear a young girl singing something. He could hear words and different vocal tones, but he couldn't actually understand what she was singing. My brother left my grandmother's house and came straight over to our house. He was visibly shaken and quite distraught. He tried to collect his nerves, and with a shaky tone to his voice, he told us he had something to show us, and then he played the voicemail. We all heard it, and he was right. It was absolutely terrifying. I remember my grandma telling us that there was a little girl in a pink dress and headband that had been seen in that house many times over the years. Sometimes there was also a dog that would appear with the girl, and they could be heard in that house throughout the night, most notably in the bathroom, but also in his now bedroom. Time and time again, my grandfather and grandmother reported that they could feel that dog jumping up and walking around on their bed. They could feel that dog stepping in between them on the covers. My brother said that he had also experienced someone tugging on his clothes as he was in the bathroom washing his hands. Same with my father, in the same bathroom. My father said that he was pushed while he was peeing, and this caused him to make a mess all over the floor. My mum had been using the bathroom one time when she heard something from over by the door. She couldn't tell what the sound was, or where it was coming from at first. Then she noticed that the doorknob to that bathroom door was turning. She watched the doorknob turn in a complete circle. Not halfway where it locks, a full turn. Another time, I'd gotten out the shower, again in that same bathroom, and there was some weird writing on the mirror. Nobody could read the writing, and everybody denied that they'd written anything on that mirror with their finger. My grandmother states quite often, "You cannot come into my home and terrorise my family. I won't allow it." Personally, I think she needs to get that house blessed. We never get the feeling that the spirits are malevolent in any way. More mischievous than anything. But it still really gives me the creeps. Story 5. I thought it was a home invasion. For the first time ever, my live-in in-laws went on vacation. The day they left, and just 10 minutes after my husband had left for work, me and my daughter were home alone. I heard a loud bang. It sounded just like a window shattering. I was absolutely convinced that somebody had smashed a window, so I barricaded me and my daughter into our bathroom and called 911. The cops arrived and they had a thorough look around the place. There were no broken windows or any evidence of a disturbance. They came inside to take a look around, and they found nothing out of the ordinary. So after they left, I decided to take a look around. Nothing was broken on the floor anywhere. For that matter, nothing was intact on the floor anywhere either. Yet, I was absolutely convinced that somebody had smashed one of my windows. This was horrifying to live through, and I was convinced that I was losing my mind. My worst nightmare is someone invading my home and harming me or my daughter. I should mention that my now deceased stepfather's birthday was just the day before. We had a somewhat turbulent relationship, to put it lightly, and he really seemed to enjoy making my life miserable. Also, the previous owner did die in that house on hospice. So, ever since this incident, there has been frequent noises and occurrences around that house. These occurrences could have a logical explanation. There would be loud knocking on our bedroom window while we were sleeping, the sound of someone working in the workhouse late at night, and also chairs being moved around in the dining room, etc. But I'm never one to just presume that there's a paranormal cause. I know life can be weird, and there's quite often a logical explanation for weird things that happen. And since the event, when I heard that loud smash, nothing really has happened. It's been quiet for a fair few days now, which in itself is quite strange. We've been trying not to read too much into things and jump to conclusions. We usually have white noise playing in the background while we fall asleep to distract us from the noises. Thankfully, there'd been no noises in the house for a while. That was until last night. I was fast asleep on the sofa after a Valentine's meal and a few glasses of wine. But it was only 9 PM, so my husband was still wide awake. He came and woke me up because he kept hearing things. Bear in mind, this man was raised by Jehovah's Witness parents, so he was very skeptical. He actually never believed anything like this was possible until we moved into that house. So I woke up and said something like, "Whatever, I'm going back to sleep." But then, I heard it too. I heard a chair being dragged across the floor in the kitchen. Instinctively, I went to investigate, and none of the chairs were out of place. So I checked the cameras. Nothing. Then, I heard what sounded like things being moved around in the guest room, and something falling in the living room. We fetched our gun and checked the whole house, and we found nothing, so we tried our best to ignore the noises and went to bed. Later that night, we were woken by the sound of someone knocking very loudly on our window. This had happened before, but nobody ever showed up on our cameras. I woke up the next morning to get myself and my daughter ready for our day. I was walking towards our bedroom to get my phone charger when I saw this picture frame lying on the floor. I messaged my husband to ask him if he had placed it there, and of course he said that he hadn't. The wall this is sitting against is connected to my in-bedroom office, which hadn't been used at all yesterday. It was left alone all day and night. What makes this significant is that that photo is a picture of my dad holding me as an infant. My real dad died when I was about 4 months old. As previously stated, my relationship with my stepdad was full of conflict. He really hated that I had a different biological father and wouldn't let me refer to him as dad. I'm not sure whether this feels like I'm being taunted by my stepdad, or whether it's my real dad attempting to make contact. Any advice on the matter would be hugely appreciated. The following video is actual footage of that picture frame falling from the shelf. Before you see that video, if you enjoy this type of content and would like to see more stories like this, please tap that like button and subscribe to this channel for a feast of grim and grisly content. If you have any thoughts on today's stories, please leave them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Severed Soul.